Hi, it's Karyn Turk with Ion South Florida. I'm here pre-Hurricane Irma, and we're with the Plantation Fire Department today, and we're going to be talking a little bit about last-minute hurricane prep because we're almost there, and we're also going to talk a little bit about what to do after the storm, rescue, recovery, and I got Joel Gordon here, so he's the expert. So we were talking a little bit, there's been some trending topics online today about the Zelo App and ways that you can connect with law enforcement and the fire department if you're in trouble after the storm. What are your thoughts on that?
I haven't really seen the app much. I see a lot of the conversation that's going on Facebook and on all the other social media. Years ago, we used to have on the cell phones what was called a push-to-talk app. It actually worked like a radio where you could push the button and talk to anybody across the country.
What were those, Next phones? What did they call them?
I think they were a wind-up, some kind of crank thing. So any app that you can use that allows you to communicate with family members during or after a storm is critical. What we tell everybody is one of the best things you can do is have a relative or a contact person out of the area that all your family members can call if they get separated or something happens, and they can then relate back and say, yeah, everybody's safe or everybody's here or there. It helps the reunification. So, like I said, even though I haven't seen or used that app, if that helps you, that's great. The one thing I do know about it, the conversation seems to say that you do need either cell service or you do need some kind of an internet uplink in order for it to work. So I wouldn't depend on that. And one of the other things we see after a storm is, the technology is great and we've become a technology-dependent society. But when the towers go down and when the power goes down, the technology disappears. So sometimes things as silly as a plug-in regular analog phone may be your best tool.
What is the best way for our community to get in touch with you in the event of an emergency? If they're in trouble during the storm or after the storm, a lot of us are going to ride it out. What's your advice for those people that are going to stay here and ride the storm out?
Well, my advice is with this storm is don't ride it out. Go someplace safe. I mean, that's the best advice we can give you right now. South Florida has not seen a storm of this magnitude in recent times. Wilma, Andrew, none of these were the size of this monster. So really, if you live in a low-lying area, manufactured home or older home, consider evacuating. But if you do choose to stay, what we tell everybody is, number one, prepare to be without services for at least 3 days. Because during those initial moments or days after the storm, we're involved in emergency response and recovery and all that kind of stuff. We may not be able to get to you. So it's critical that you be able to sustain yourself. 911 is usually always up and running. However, people need to understand, once the winds hit 40 to 45 miles an hour, we cannot put these big trucks on the road. So we are not coming.
And we have to create a safe situation for the people who can save us, the first responders. So we certainly don't want you to be in any danger when you're out during the storm. So I totally understand that. But you're saying 911 is the best way to access you if there is an emergency during the storm.
Right. What we will do is during the height of the storm, we will take the calls in, we'll prioritize them, and as soon as we can get out the door, we'll go to the higher priority calls. But please understand that there's going to be a lot of those, and those are only the higher priorities. The shelters in Broward County open tomorrow at noon. There's plenty of them around. They're not the best places. It's not a lap of luxury, but it's a place to go that's safe.
So the shelters will be open at what time tomorrow?
Shelters open at noon tomorrow. That's Thursday. And those are just regular shelters. There are shelters for people with pets. There's also special needs shelters. So somebody who requires medical care needs to get to one of the medical needs shelters because we're not going to be able to provide ongoing medical services during the storm.
There's two things that you mentioned that I want to get back to. The first thing is you said that you need to have 3 days worth of supplies, folks. 3 days worth of supplies where you might not have any services at all. What is the bare minimum for those 3 days? What do you recommend that everybody has?
Well, the biggest thing is water. We always tell everybody 1 gallon per person per day for at least 3 days. I know that water's been in a tremendous shortage. It's hard to get, but some other things to consider is if you can store tap water now in like big jugs or something, that's one way to do it.
Or make ice cubes.
Ice cubes are great, and they will melt and you can drink them. Also, in a pinch, you can fill your tub and take water from there. So that's the biggest thing. Medications. You should have at least a week's worth of extra medication supply. And now that the governor has signed a declaration of emergency, the pharmacies will fill your prescriptions ahead of time. So even if you're not out or you're close to being out, get them filled now. Canned goods are another thing that we recommend. But make sure if you got canned goods, you have a manual can opener, because when the power's out, that one doesn't work.
That's a great point. And what should somebody go into a shelter? What do you need to bring to a shelter besides the medications and the things that somebody would have on their person? What other things do you need to bring to be comfortable while you're there? Because you could be there for a couple days, right?
Oh, you could be there for at least a couple of days. The important thing when you're going to a shelter is they provide you with a space on the floor. So you need to bring blankets, pillows, changes of clothing, personal, hygiene supplies, whatever. The shelters do try and feed you. The Red Cross does a really great job with that. But any other necessities you need, you've got to bring them.
Hi, so now we're here and the storm is pretty much imminent. It's happening now. We're in the midst of a hurricane. What do our viewers do to keep safe?
The biggest thing we tell everybody is stay indoors. Wherever you found that's safe, stay there. There's a tendency to want to see what's going on, particularly if the eye of the storm passes overhead. When the eye passes over, the weather is going to clear. It's going to be like a bright sunny day, and everybody wants to go outside and assess the damage. The problem is, as that back eye wall comes through, and it may be as short as 5-10 minutes, you won't realize that it comes through quickly, and the storm's going to kick right back up again. And people have been injured and killed going out during the eye of the storm.
So not only stay indoors, do not get in your vehicle, do not try to leave, that's not the time to seek safety. You're already safe if you are where you are, so you should just stay indoors and stay in place.
Yeah, wherever you are when the storm starts, that's where you're going to be until it's completely done. And we will announce when it's safe to go outside.
What do you do if one of your windows breaks open or your roof blows off during the storm? What do you do in that moment? Because obviously I would be completely panicked.
The best thing to do is just seek the best shelter you possibly can. Again, do not go outside. It's almost like a sinking ship or a sinking boat. You're best off hanging on until the last possible minute. So find yourself the best shelter you can and stay put.
Stay put. So, Chief, what do we do once the storm is passed? What's the best way to get back to normal life? What's your first step?
First thing you want to do is you're going to want to get outside. You're going to want to see what happened. You're going to want to assess the damage. The biggest thing is to not try and travel around. The roads are probably going to be blocked. Emergency services have to get through. Stay where you are. If you need help, put up some kind of a signal, either like hang out a white sheet or a red flag or something. What we do immediately afterwards is we pass through the streets and we look for areas of damage and look for anybody who's immediately injured. So stay put and send up some kind of a signal if you need help. The other thing is everybody, usually the power goes out and most people have generators. Generators are a great tool. They do a great job of keeping everything going, but they can be dangerous. The biggest thing with a generator is it cannot be operated near an open window or a door. Generators put out an exhaust called carbon monoxide. It's a toxic gas that will kill you, and there's no odor, and you can't see it, you can't smell it, and you basically will go to sleep and not wake up.
And your carbon monoxide detector, if it's hardwired and doesn't have a battery backup, isn't going to work in this situation, is it?
Right, exactly. But if you do have a carbon monoxide detector, it'd be important to make sure it's working at that point.
Absolutely.
So that's the biggest thing with generators, away from doors and away from windows.
And what about people that try to back wire their generators and feed their house? I've seen this done before too. What does the fire department say about that?
Do not do that. There's a proper method of hooking up a transfer switch to be able to power your house. But if you haven't done that or you haven't had a properly licensed electrician do it, don't do it because it's going to cause tremendous problems.
What can they do to be able to clean up, stay safe, and deal with the next couple of days of chaos?
Well, the two things that are really, really big, one are shutters. Most everybody has covered their windows with shutters or some kind of covering. And the important thing is when you take them down, we strongly suggest you take them down as quickly as you possibly can to make sure you got air in the house, to make sure that the house is open and you can get out if necessary. But you need to handle the shutters with sturdy gloves and eye protection. And if you're not skilled at it, get somebody to help you.
So we talked about generator safety. We don't want to backwire our generators. We want to make sure that it's in an area that has proper ventilation. And we want to make sure that when we're taking our shutters down, we're using proper equipment and preventing injury.
Correct. And the last thing is when you go to clean up the debris, if you're operating a chainsaw, if you've never used one before, now is not the time to learn. Get somebody who knows what they're doing, because people get really badly hurt with that.
Well, there you have it. Hopefully we've all weathered this storm well, and thank you so much for your tips and for telling our audience the things that they can do to stay safe.
My pleasure. Thank you.
We've learned some great tips and tricks today. A huge thank you to our first responders here in South Florida. And remember, we are South Florida strong. For Eye on South Florida, I'm Karyn Turk.